Friends, while Ukraine claims to have liberated Kupyansk after a devastating counterattack, Russia reports to have smashed what they called a TikTok offensive. What's actually going on? Who's right? This is what we're going to explore in this video. Kupyansk is this town in Kharkiv Oblast sitting on both banks of the Encircles river. Russian forces first captured Kupyansk on the 27th of February 2022, but then Ukraine retook it on the 10th of September 2022. 3 years later, the Russian army was back. And just as Russian assault units mopped up the last remaining districts of the town, Ukraine launched a counterattack from all directions.
Another fuck up. Another fuck up.
From an operational perspective, this operation was to be expected. Russia's 6th Command Arms Army fighting on the banks of the Encircles River was overstretched as it held a 60-kilometer front. And by storming Kupyansk, it exposed its right flank to the enemy. This is when the general staff of the AFU secretly prepared the counterattack, and forcing the Russians to abandon months of gains in a matter of days. Remember what I said in my last report. In the end, only a Ukrainian counterattack against Counterattack could halt the Russian momentum in Kupyansk. This is literally what happened. It was a complete humiliation for the Russian army. They got spanked hard. However, we do have indications that this might be a well-elaborated PR stunt. Zelensky supposedly showing up on the battlefield only a couple hundred meters away from the contact line. It's very sus. Or how we were told Kupyansk was fully liberated. I want to believe this, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, which we don't have. Additionally, when we go on the Deep State UA map, we see that all this area in blue is said to have been liberated. But as of now, there are no Ukrainian geolocations confirming any of these claims, especially for all these settlements in the northern part of town. And again, as of now, the evidence provided by Ukraine is very flimsy. So in this video, we'll try to sort through this mess. And while we're at it, we'll also take a look at the bigger picture, the other battles taking place in Kharkiv Oblast. I'm just thinking what factor could break the tie in Kupyansk. This is the bone marrow hack that makes those $50,000 stem injections obsolete. Did you know that your bone marrow is holding millions of stem cells hostage? But this powder right here sets them free. This doctor from Harvard discovered that cocoa flavonols are like a jailbreak for stem cells. They burst out like bees in a beehive into your bloodstream, looking for damage to repair. Jacked up knees, they go there. Heart damage, they go there too. Brain fog, yep, they cover that. Rich people are paying 50 grand to inject foreign stem cells. But this activates your own. No trips to Mexico needed. And if you're not convinced, listen to this clip of Dr. Simon Mills, one of the top herbal medicine researchers in the world.
One of the best medicines around is 50 grams, 100 grams of 75% or more dark chocolate. Brain health as well, cardiovascular health. They do studies where they've put cocoa into volunteers, that means students usually, so young kids, and they were able to show changes in the blood flow within minutes, certainly within an hour of eating cocoa. Beneficial changes in your blood flow.
That's right, dark chocolate. But most of the flavonols get destroyed when chocolate is processed. But Black Forest takes the finest cocoa, and they extract the flavonols out of it into a 1,200 milligram clinical dose. And those flavonols are what activates your stem cells. Look, because I had so much work, I was getting tired from heavy lifts, and I was starting to feel pain in my shoulders and my wrists. And then I started putting this into my morning coffee. And I have to say I feel much more energetic. I lift way more without feeling drained. Seated chest press machine, 3 plates 25 on each side. Easy. And the pain is gone. If you're starting to get older and suddenly everything hurts, your stem cells may need a wake-up call. Black Forest just launched their Christmas sale of the year, and it's insane. 40% off their best-selling cocoa formula. Available for 48 hours only. So if you've been thinking about trying it, act now. Once 48 hours pass, this promo is going to be gone for good. And prices will go up again. Stock up before it's gone forever. Take control of your health before someone else does it for you. Are you ready? Let's jump right in. I'm just warning you, there's going to be a lot of plot twists in this video. This was the approximate frontline situation in Kupyansk in my last video on the 21st of September. Russian forces advanced 2.5 kilometers in two directions, which formed some sort of pincer that caught a number of Ukrainian troops into a cauldron. While this battle was taking place at the center of Kupyansk, the gray zone expanded 2 kilometers to the west, a move that threatened Ukrainian logistics south of the town. But now we have this exclusive report by Ukrainian journalist Yuri Butusov, who directly participated in this battle for Kupyansk. On the following Facebook post, he explained that on the 21st of September, the 2nd Army Corps formed a strike group meant to counterattack north of the city. Colonel Ihor Obolensky was appointed to command the operation. This means Ukrainian forces regrouped somewhere in the sector, ready to strike Russia's overstretched supply lines. And I guess I wasn't too far off in my previous video. In the end, only a Ukrainian counterattack against Kinderashivka could halt the Russian momentum in Kupyansk. I guess some people paid attention to my work, I don't know. Now, if we fast forward to the 21st of November, so 2 months later, Russia's 6th Command Arms Army released a lot of footage from their recent combat operations inside Kupyansk. It seemed they were making a lot of progress. We can observe Ukrainian tanks being destroyed, as well as countless armored vehicles and pickup trucks heading into Kupyansk. In the sequence, a 3-man Ukrainian sabotage team was captured near a river, and overall Russian storm detachments were mopping up the last remaining enemy positions in town.
We have captured a building, my lord!
The final days of Kupyansk were approaching. The fortress was about to fall, and the consequences would be terrible for the entire northern front. It would essentially force the AFU to abandon all its positions on the east bank of the Uskal River. But there it seemed that not even King Arthur could pull the Russians out of Kupyansk. The footage by the 6th Command Arms Army also featured 3 Russian flags being raised all across the entire town. One was raised at the Rosa Luxemburg Square, another one at the hospital close to the city center, and the last one all the way south of the town. It became clear that the Russians had made significant gains in the past few weeks. However, much of Kupyansk remained in a gray zone, resembling more a patchwork of contested areas rather than a uniform, controlled urban space. For example, in this video, we see Ukrainian special forces launching a raid against the city center of Kupyansk before pulling back. This mission happened right here, but we could also mark Ukrainian troops as still present in this cauldron, as well as in the southern districts along the Uskal River. And yet, despite the obviously contested nature of the battle, the previous day, Russian General Colonel Sergei Kuzolev reported to Putin that Kupyansk was fully under Russian control. I can't believe it, it's so cringe. It's like updating your LinkedIn profile, everybody's congratulating you, while you still have a couple rounds of interviews ahead. In this video, the general stated, assault units have completed the liberation of the city of Kupyansk, to which Putin replied, so everything is finished, completely? To which the general replied, exactly, the city is under our control. Small scattered enemy groups are being destroyed. And that's not even the worst part. On December 9th, General Colonel Sergei Kuzolev would be awarded the Gold Star Medal of the Hero of the Russian Federation, just as Ukrainian forces were counterattacking and regaining control of Kupyansk.
Fuck.
But, no spoilers. But let's not go too fast, let's go back to the 21st of November. What surprised me the most in that video from the 6th Command Arms Army is that Russian troops also raised their colors on the eastern side of town, namely at the Kupyansk milk and canning plant as well as the sugar factory.
What are you doing here?
And that's when I remembered something I told you in my last video. On the 9th of September, Russian aviation bombarded multiple high-rise buildings on the east side of Kupyansk. But I wonder why, especially considering Russian troops are still 5 to 6 kilometers away from these positions. Perhaps this could indicate preparatory strikes to weaken Ukraine positions on the east bank of Kupyansk. But for real, how did they get there? The only explanation I can think of is that assault detachments from the 6th Command Arms Army crossed the river and secured a foothold on the east bank of the Uskal. That way they don't have to launch a frontal attack on Ukrainian positions and they can just flank them. In this footage, we can see how they did it. We can observe a Russian soldier coming out of the water. He's holding on to a rope. Then in teams of 3, They plunged back, all the while holding onto that same rope, trying to keep their backpacks out from the water. At the same time, we can also believe Russian troops were funneled into these factories from this forest in the north. To me, this is extremely important, because that would mean the Russian command transferred significant forces to the east bank of Kupyansk while weakening the positions they were holding on the west bank. And they probably did that because they failed to detect the Ukrainian concentration of forces forming on the right flank. Yet, all the signs were there. Throughout October and November, Ukrainian forces managed to re-establish control over positions in the forested areas northwest and north of Moskovka. Some Ukrainian patrols even reached deep into Kupyansk as attested by Russian FPV drone strikes and artillery shelling. So as Russian forces penetrated deeper and deeper into the urban area of Kupyansk, they failed to take the proper precautions for the menace on the right flank.
I ain't seen nothing. I don't see much of nothing.
This formed the operational setting in which the Battle of Kupyansk would evolve. Now I have this very interesting video to show you that was recorded exactly 1 week later on the 28th of November. We see a Russian thermite drone attempting to burn down the anti-drone netting at the entrance of the city of Kupyansk. This happened right here on the map, along this road southwest of Kupyansk. And just like in a magic trick, I will ask you to carefully remember this location. It will become extremely important in a short moment. That same day, heavy fighting took place along the PO7 highway. The northern part was controlled by the Russians and the southern part by Ukrainian forces. Yeah, more or less. Because just like I told you before, we're looking at a patchwork of areas of control. A firefight erupted, and that's when a Ukrainian soldier was wounded. 6 of his comrades lifted him on a stretcher back to the rear. And then, I can't show you the video, but a couple seconds later, a Russian drone came crashing in. The result was a carnage. Only 2 of the Ukrainians managed to run away. 2 out of 7 soldiers. The rest laid there. And that's when another Russian drone came to finish off the survivors. Yeah, war is hell. To be frank, after I watched this video, I just closed everything and went for a walk. Anyway, let's continue. Now, the Russian bridgehead over the Oskol River depended mostly on the village of Dvorichna, located 15 kilometers north of Kupyansk. However, the bridge over the river was destroyed. One of the main objectives for Russian engineers was to rebuild a new crossing, one that would allow reinforcements, mechanized units, and supplies to reach the bridgehead. However, in this footage, we see a thick Russian dump truck filled with rocks and concrete debris being targeted and burned down by drones of the Ukrainian 151st Mechanized Brigade. We can see that Russia's 6th Command Arms Army was severely overstretched, but not only that, its logistics situation was getting increasingly dire. However, the situation was not much better for the Ukrainians, as dozens of Russian fiber optics drones ambushed one convoy after another. And since these drones can't be jammed, they're causing devastating losses on the armed forces of Ukraine. Because of that, an increasing number of Ukrainian supplies were transported by UGVs or unmanned ground vehicles. But according to this footage from the 1st of December, Russian fiber optics drones once again systematically tried to hunt them down. We can also observe that the anti-drone netting south of the city has been brought down. The same one that was targeted by the thermite drone. Once again, remember these images. And that's when the Russian fiber optics drone follows and strikes a Ukrainian soldier. This strike took place only 150 meters away from where the medic team was hit a couple days earlier. Overall, this confirms that the AFU was still present in this high-rise district. Here you can see what the southern district of Kupyansk looks like. Row after row of shattered homes, followed by multi-level concrete apartment blocks from the Soviet era. Some 6 stories high, others much bigger, with 9 floors, but all of them battered and in ruins. The next day, on the 2nd of December, Ukraine's 13th Kharkiv Brigade launched a counterattack from the center of Kupyansk northwards. We'll analyze this attack in just a minute. But what's interesting is that up until that moment, this brigade, the 13th Kharkiv Brigade, was positioned north of the city of Kharkiv. We can see that the Ukrainian command redeployed and concentrated considerable forces around Kupyansk for this operation. Apparently, brigades were even redeployed from Sumy. And in May, Military Land announced that this brigade was forming an international battalion. Many of these recruits came from Latin America. It's some of these South American foreign volunteers that took enemy positions by storm in Kupyansk. The Post mentioned a mixed unit of Brazilians and Colombians. The GoPro footage was recorded at 8 in the morning. You can observe a rifle squad progressing amidst the ruins. Then they stop and quickly scatter to take cover. Drones are circling above and they have to hide. Then these foreign volunteers try to shoot down that drone. This is followed by an explosion, but no casualties were reported. In the video it's funny because these foreign volunteers speak a hybrid of Portuguese and Spanish, which is called Portuñol. Here these Brazilians tell their Hispanic comrades to get moving. Together they hurry out of this kill zone and regroup inside an apartment block. If we look at the map, this means these foreign fighters infiltrated this city like this and then launched the assault. If the firefight happened there, we can believe that this entire Ukrainian pocket of resistance had indeed collapsed. Maybe there were still Ukrainian forces operating at the bottom part, but that's about it. Essentially everything north of the railway line was under Russian control. So about half the city. Now when I told you this area south of the Kharkiv road was under Ukrainian control, I should have said partially under Ukrainian control because on the 3rd of December, Russian troops were detected right in this high-rise building. We know this because of the following footage, where we see a Ukrainian drone strike against Russian UAV operators hiding on the last floor of this commie block. The resulting explosion caused an entire part of the building to collapse. Looks just like the current state of Hollywood. As the general staff spearheaded the operation with expendable and very expensive South American mercenaries, numerous Ukrainian rifle teams followed and started infiltrating into Kupyansk as well. And it seems to me that Russian UAV operators were just overwhelmed. Ukrainian soldiers would leap from one building to another and thus evade detection. Yet some units were unfortunately discovered. In this footage, Russian drone pilots targeted a total of 12 Ukrainian infantrymen moving in teams of 3 to 4 soldiers. Not only was this only a fraction of the entire counterattack, but all these FPV drone strikes were geolocated north of Kupyansk.
Everybody stay calm! What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure? Stay calm! Wait! Everybody calm down!
For real, how did they get there? Helicopters? No, not this time. The most likely explanation is that Ukrainian storm detachments infiltrated the northern part of Kupyansk from their base in Moskovka through the industrial sector and the cemetery. The distance is only 2,000 meters, and it's achievable if the enemy does not have enough boots on the ground to prevent such infiltrations. And it seems the Russian defense revolved around drone strikes. Does it ring a bell? That was exactly the Ukrainian battle plan in Pokrovsk, and we know what happened next. So this sabotage team was spotted 1,500 meters north from where the South American mercenaries had fought. This means the Russian garrison in Kupyansk was about to get encircled. And not only that, they were getting pinned down by droves of Ukrainian drones. The Russian command must have panicked. Victory was slipping from their hands. And the worst part is that the Ukrainians learned and now copy-pasted the exact same tactics that got the Russians inside Kupyansk in the first place. Yet this terrible situation did not prevent the Russian General Kuzlovlev from going to Moscow to get his medal.
Shameful display!
That's when a Russian telegram channel called Divgen reported the following. A few days ago, the armed forces of Ukraine launched a local offensive here, with the aim of regaining control of the city. We're observing a large number of Ukrainian army reserves concentrated here, including the newly revealed 475th Assault Regiment, which is mainly composed of former prisoners. Now, I cannot confirm if the 475th Assault Regiment is indeed composed of former prisoners, but if the operational situation painted by Divgen is true, that means Ukrainian rifle teams advanced along the rail embankment and infiltrated positions between Radkivka and Moskovka. That explains why Ukrainian troops were geolocated north of Kupyansk, across the industrial area and through the cemetery, just like we talked about. Now the problem for Ukraine was bringing enough reserves to the Schwerpunkt, the focal point of their attack. Unfortunately, due to the poor weather, Ukrainian armored vehicles were forced to use roads that were under heavy drone surveillance. At the same time, it's also the poor weather like fog that allowed Ukrainian rifle teams to infiltrate into Kupyansk while evading drone detection. Now, I also have this video to show you. It's from a Telegram channel called Operational Space, and they have exclusive footage from the Kupyansk direction. I highly recommend you to check them out, link will be in the description. So in this video from the 6th of December, we see a Russian rifle team mopping up areas that were getting infiltrated. They're clearing this house. Moments later, a Ukrainian soldier of the 15th Brigade Counterattack throws out his rifle and surrenders to the Russian troops. According to the post, he was sent forward as part of an infiltration mission. Eventually, he was all alone and his commanders essentially forgot about him. And that's when he got extremely hungry and dehydrated. That's why when Russian soldiers showed up, he quickly surrendered. Now let's take a quick look at what was happening on the east side of the city, on the other side of the Oskol River. On the 10th of December, a Russian detachment of 8 motorcycles and 6 squads left Sinkivka and tried to storm Petropavlivka. They drove for 3 kilometers, and just as they were about to reach the first houses of the village, they were stopped by swarms of FPV drones from the Ukrainian 30th Kharkiv Brigade. Although this assault had failed, the pressure was increasing on Petropavlivka. The settlement acted as a bulwark east of Kupyansk, but Russian forces were converging on it from all sides. 2 days later, a couple kilometers to the south, a Russian fiber optics drone spotted a suspicious tunnel, and there it found 4 Ukrainian armored vehicles, which were quickly destroyed. It wasn't very glorious, but when you can increase your XP count, you do it. Some Russian analysts suspected that the Ukrainians were preparing a large-scale counterattack in the Kupyansk direction. And yeah, that's exactly what happened. This was the approximate frontline situation by the 12th of December in Kupyansk. More and more Ukrainian troops were pushing into Kupyansk in small teams from the southwestern entry of the town, undoing weeks of Russian gains. Here we see a 6-man Ukrainian rifle squad that then splits up into fire teams. Moments later, they're hunted down by Russian FPV drones. And you will notice there's always a Russian recon drone guiding the actual drone strike. So it's a team effort. And the second thing we can observe is that most of these strikes are done using fiber optics drones. I think it's because most of the regular FPV drones just get jammed by Ukrainian electronic warfare capabilities. But I don't know, I could be wrong. Maybe Russian unmanned units only use fiber optic drones these days. Anyway, one of the Ukrainian units that participated in this great counterattack against Kupyansk was a company of the 425th Skala Regiment. Whenever Skala shows up, just like in Pokrovsk, you know you're about to hop on the latest PR roller coaster. With that being said, they're also used because they're experts at hit-and-run attacks, meant to inflict as many casualties as possible on the enemy before pulling back. Their role is purely offensive, they never hold the terrain. For example, in this video posted by Skala, they describe their operation against the southwestern part of Kupyansk with the high-rise buildings. We see multiple 3-man demolition teams plant explosive charges at the base of these towering apartment blocks. And then they detonated everything, and as a result, entire sections of the buildings crumbled. Why do CQB when you can just blow everything up, right? Now, the byproduct of this video is that it confirms that the AFU had lost this high-rise district, and the orcs had taken over. But that's not all. Then detachments of Ukraine's 138th Special Purpose Center were geolocated pushing 500 meters further along the PO7 highway. What is going on? Now, that's when Deep State UA drastically changed the map. Not in the southern district of Kupyansk that we just analyzed with all the geolocated footage. No, but to the north. This was the frontline situation according to Deep State UA on the 11th of December, and this is what they reported 24 hours later. Deep State claims that Ukrainian forces advanced 4 to 5 kilometers, retook the settlements of Kinderashivka, Moskovka, and Radkivka, pushing their tip all the way to Holubivka and thus undoing months of Russian gains. And this almost overnight. I was naturally highly suspicious, even if this didn't take place in a day but in multiple weeks. As the saying goes, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The burden of proof is on the attacker. And as the recording of this video, there's no evidence. Just trust me, bro. Don't ask too many questions. No, Actually, I lied. The only visual confirmation we got is from this article from Ukraińska Propaganda. Ukraińska Pravda. The article quoted a very impartial and neutral source. Commander Ihor Obolensky, callsign Cornet, the commander of the operation. Okay. Let's just roll with it. He stated that troops from the 475th Assault Regiment, supported by the 4th Battalion of the 92nd Assault Brigade, have liberated the village of Kindrashivka, its outskirts and surrounding forests, while the group from the 13th Kharkiv Operational Brigade has fully liberated the village of Ratkivka and its outskirts and surrounding forests. Look, I really want to believe these guys, but show us proof! Raise a flag! I don't know, anything! Oh no, yeah, can't be done. OPSEC, yeah, OPSEC. That's when the 13th Kharkiv Brigade released the following footage. The footage to roll them all, and with all the evidence. We see Commander-in-Chief Syrsky, all smiling, and an entire headquarters leading combat operations. This is followed by GoPro footage of Ukrainian troops in the vicinity of the Kupyansk city sign. Another rifle team is seen running past a gas station, and overall multiple infantry squads lead the assault into the town. Now, thanks to the efforts of people on Twitter, the Ukrainian unit running past the gas station was geolocated right here, next to the railway line, and actually right in the former pocket that Ukrainian forces held. Back to square one, right? So, according to the Ukrainian account of the battle, if we put all the pieces of the puzzle together, Ukrainian assault units had effectively cut off Russian logistics going through the northern side of Kupyansk, combined with infiltration missions pushing from the south to pin down the defenders. It was like some sort of hammer and anvil operation. And I have to admit, if this is what actually happened, then it was a brilliant operation. A limited-scale counteroffensive with reasonable objectives, and that required relatively few troops. Ukrainian forces took advantage of the sparsely defended Russian breachhead west of the Uskal River. Now I want to hear about a little plot twist. Remember that sequence of Ukrainian troops walking by the Kupyansk sign? Turns out it's geolocated at the southernmost entrance of the town on the axis of the P79 highway. So it's actually very far from the city center. On the 9th of December, Russian drone operators uploaded this picture of a destroyed Ukrainian M113 APC that toppled the Kupyansk sign. Hold up, what? Yeah, but hold on, I actually got even better. This Kupyansk sign was already destroyed by the 11th of November according to this Ukrainian video. This means this specific scene from the 13th Kharkiv Brigade's video depicting the liberation of Kupyansk must have been recorded at least 2 months ago, when the Russians still had not pushed beyond the city center. That means the 13th Kharkiv Brigade had no problem inserting some past footage for everyone to clearly see that these counterattacks were taking place in Kupyansk.
It's all lies.
My friends, this leads us to the mythical part of this Ukrainian operation. When Zelensky showed up and recorded himself in front of the last remaining Kupyansk city sign, everyone online praised his courage, and I can understand. He did show up closer to the contact line than Putin ever did. I can even show you where this happened. This PR stunt was recorded right here, at the southwestern entrance of Kupyansk. Some people on Twitter believed this was recorded in front of a green screen. I mean, it's possible, especially since this is so close to enemy positions, and considering the number of drones that are just circling in this area. But then we got more pictures. Here we see Zelensky while he recorded himself, then when he's in front of the sign from another angle, and here again posing with this lady. So I think there's no reason to doubt that Zelensky was physically present. He really went to that Kupyansk sign. But just like the video from the Kharkiv Brigade, I think it was recorded multiple weeks ago. We have 2 clues pointing in this direction. Hint number 1. This Russian drone footage from the 13th of December, the day after Zelensky's visit, but yet we get a completely different scenery. Some people even went as far as to mark the main differences. One of the main ones is that the Kupyansk sign is missing letters. But not only that, look at the anti-drone net at the rear. In the latest footage, it has been completely destroyed. And remember that footage that I showed you earlier, the thermite drone, or this drone footage as well. This anti-drone net has been destroyed for a long time. Yet, in Zelensky's address, the anti-drone net is immaculate, not a single dent. Hint number 2. A woman drove by the same sign on the 14th, but once again, the landscape doesn't look at all like the one Zelensky filmed himself in front of, but more like the one the Russian drone recorded on the 13th. Look, you can make up your own mind, but I see 2 options. Either the Russians massively shelled this area of the Kupyansk city sign right after Zelensky's video was released. They had the coordinates and just destroyed everything around it. If we cope a little bit, it's possible. Or we just accept that the video was recorded sometime before, and Ukraine released it for a special occasion. You know what? Perhaps this was recorded in September, when the general staff of the AFU first planned this counterattack to unblock Kupyansk, and when the contact line was still kilometers away. The next day, on the 13th of December, Russian Telegram channels did acknowledge this Ukrainian counteroffensive. But they kept stating that all the enemy groups were eliminated one by one. I also remember that they said the exact same thing during the Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kharkiv in 2022. So yeah, I'm also suspicious of what they're saying. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians claim to have destroyed a pipeline that the Russians were using to bring supplies across the Oskol River inside Kupyansk. We can understand them. The Ukrainians have severe PTSD from Russians using tunnels and pipelines. So here we see how they bombed another segment of the pipeline on the east bank of the river. This makes the logistics situation for the Russian 6th Command Arms Army extremely difficult. We have enemy infiltrations north of the city, no solid crossing over the Oskol River, and now the pipeline is destroyed. On the 15th of December, Brazilian foreign volunteers made a post saying they were mopping up the remaining districts of Kupyansk and that the Russians were nowhere to be seen. Now the footage they released was located somewhere along Rivenska Street, not far away from the village of Sobolivka and the high-rise district to the south. In response, this Russian soldier from the 121st Motor Rifle Regiment of the 6th Army is patrolling through Kupyansk, and everything seems to be relatively calm. This is the perfect example of an information war. We get 2 stories that completely contradict each other. And here comes another plot twist. The Russian soldier recorded the video not in Kupyansk, but 20 kilometers to the north, in Tavilzhanka. It's such a desperate move, I don't know, very cringe. Then we also have this video from Moskovka, where we see a Russian soldier raising the white, blue, red banner. I geolocated this video right here, on the northern tip of the settlement next to the railway line. Once again, we're facing a patchwork of areas of control, like oil stains. Then on the 16th, a small Ukrainian assault group came under fire from the Russian armed forces near the railway bridge at the center of the city, not far away from where the Brazilians launched their attack a couple days before. And while all this was taking place, Ukrainian bomber drones targeted Russian positions 400 meters to the north. So according to all this data, we can conclude that Russian forces have been pushed back to where they stood in mid-September. But that's not all. To confirm this theory of the oil stains, on the 17th of December, Russian soldiers posted this video of 3 Ukrainian soldiers they captured in the village of Sobolivka, right here on the map that was supposedly liberated by the Ukrainian counterattack. Yet, according to this footage, we can still attest of Russian presence in this area. And as the Ukrainian command kept forwarding emails full of reinforcements into the urban area, Russian drones continued harassing scattered groups of Ukrainian infantrymen. The onslaught on Ukrainian infantry continued the next day. However, a number of these drone strikes happened on the very northern outskirts of the city. And then, in the following footage, we see soldiers from Ukraine's 151st Separate Reconnaissance Battalion pushing into Kupyansk, and the falling snow confirms that it was recorded quite recently. Here are all the places of their itinerary that could be geolocated. The question is, how did they get there? One option is that these troops advanced from the forest south of Sobolivka into the high ground north of the railway line. Option number 2 is that they pushed from Moskovka all the way down to the city center, in which case Russian forces have lost the entire western part of their gains. As you can see, the situation is very confusing. In the end, according to the evidence we have gathered, The big Ukrainian counterattack that totally liberated Kupyansk only achieved a fraction of what it promised. According to the most sensible reports, the front line didn't change that significantly. Ukrainian forces did make some gains along the PO7 highway and in the southern sectors of Kupyansk. We can also believe that they reinforced their presence in the villages of Sobolivka and Moskovka, settlements that were already in the gray zone anyway. So once again, no real change. Then yes, they made some gains in the gray zone in the sector of Kindrashivka and Radkivka, but we're still waiting for the evidence. It's still crazy to think that after a week, there hasn't been a single flag raised to confirm the capture of these settlements. Otherwise, the front line along the P79 highway remains relatively the same. The only notable difference is that 2-kilometer salient Ukrainian forces have captured after pushing towards the Oskol River, but it's yet to be determined how much effective control of the area they actually have. So in conclusion, I think the Ukrainian counterattack in Kupyansk was a success, as it undid 2 months of Russian progress and brought back the battle where it stood in mid-September. That said, the broader situation of the Kupyansk front cannot be ignored. Russian forces have secured part of the east bank of Kupyansk, while other units are advancing on Petropavlivka from multiple directions, placing the entire salient at risk. According to the latest reports, Russian elements have once again expanded their area of control in the industrial sector east of the Oskol River. So it's possible that the Russians lose control of the west bank of Kupyansk and just get their hands on the east bank. It's actually a pretty good deal. Further south, Russian troops are pushing towards Borova. As a result, Ukrainian forces in this pocket are now considered to be in an operational encirclement. This means Ukraine's entire Oskol River front is about to collapse. But all this pales in comparison to the broader situation in Kharkiv Oblast. Since early November, Russian forces have secured a roughly 30-kilometer stretch of the Russia-Ukraine border between the settlements of Milove and Topoli. The axis of advance is clearly oriented towards Veliki Borluk, just 18 kilometers from the current contact line. But it's not a surprise, I actually told you about this in one of my previous reports. Actually, this could be combined with another border crossing operation. The idea would be to unite the Milove-Kamianka-Dvorishna fronts as they advance towards Veliki Borluk. And this could be where most Russian reinforcements are being funneled to. Considering this sector appears to be only lightly defended by Ukrainian units, it's very far from their supply lines, and overall it appears there that the Ukrainians are only carrying out a rearguard battle. And that's not all, because 40 kilometers northwest of Veliki Borluk, Russian forces made a lot of gains in Vovchansk. That was the situation on October 1st, and this is the situation now 2.5 months later. The Russian 128th Separate Motor Rifle Brigade advanced 3 kilometers inside this forest, to the point where they're storming the village of Sinelnikove. Meanwhile, the Russian 136th Motor Rifle Brigade mopped up almost all the ground north of the Vovcha River. And then even by Deep State's accounts, the Russians managed to establish a 1-kilometer bridgehead south of the river, while the rest of Vovchansk lays in the gray zone. And that is in the best case scenario for Ukraine, because according to the latest reports from the city, Russian storm detachments are clearing one district after another. In this drone footage, we can see a 3-man team mopping up this 2-story building, whereas in this one, we see 6 Russian stormtroopers attacking this building before spreading out to encircle it and trapping the defenders inside. Plot twist, these 2 videos date from over a month ago. In reality, by the 15th of December, Russian patrols were already progressing inside the settlements of Liman and Vilna. Perhaps the Russian command will be forced to abandon its positions on the west bank of Kupyansk to achieve the greater objectives of clearing the entire east bank of the Oskol River and converging its forces on Veliki Borluk. But that is yet to be determined. That's all I have for you today. Make sure to check out Black Force supplements. The link is in the description below. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support my work, make sure to check out my Patreon or PayPal. The links are also in the description below.